Hello and welcome back to On the Soul's Terms podcast. Thanks a lot for joining me today. And today we're doing our fairy tale episode. It's the final in a trilogy of episodes. It feels like it's a sequence here that began in the 7th house when we explored Snow White, and then moved into the story of the Raven in the 8th house. And now we're going to conclude this trilogy with the story of the Juniper Tree. And there's quite a synchronous timing here, as our episode today, it'll be released on the 19th of December or the 18th of December, depending on where you are in the world. Just heading into this Sagittarian new moon that's just coming up, which will take us gently, hopefully gently, into the solstice, which in the northern hemisphere is the darkest day, the longest night of the year. And in the southern hemisphere is the lightest day, the longest day of the year. So we have this mirroring of southern and northern hemisphere. But we will be focusing on the northern hemisphere today because the Grimm brothers story is obviously from the German countryside. And so we understand this story as the Juniper Tree to be read into the darkest time of the year. And my understanding is that when it got really, really dark, this is when the real golden stories would come out. Maybe the ghost stories, maybe the terrifying stories would come out at this time of year. And the Juniper Tree, I must admit, I'm a little nervous bringing it to you because it is quite a violent story. It's quite an intense story. So I want to give you this opportunity now, if you don't really feel like going into the ghost story territory or where some pretty horrible and horrific things happen, then maybe you want to pause and come back another time, or maybe skip this episode. That's totally up to you. So you've been forewarned. And yet, if you are interested in coming along for the journey today, I can say that it does go from the darkest into the lightest. It's a bit like the journey of 8th house into 9th house. And there is certainly a sense of metabolizing the trauma and the mayhem and the chaos and the dark material, the underworld of the 8th. There is a sense in this story of the metabolizing of that and bringing into a great sense of meaning, a reclamation of voice, a reclamation of our wings, and the ability to live on. Much like the juniper tree itself really represents, it's an evergreen and a winter tree, and it's a tree that would live on through the winter. It's a tree that is representative of that ability of life to live on throughout even the darkest of times. It's one of these trees that was considered to be a liminal tree, so an in-between world tree, much like the hazel that I explored through the story of Cinderella. The hazel was more like a bridge to another world, but this is more of an underworld tree, often a tree that one would find in cemeteries, and it's associated with funerals, but it's also a protective tree. It's a maternal tree and a chthonic tree, and chthonic is a word that means from the earth up. It's the sort of tree that Jung referred to as a temenos, which is a tree that can hold and contain, and the holding and containing is of the deep longing and of death and of fragmentation and of waiting. And the tree also, like a family tree, is able to remember in a way that the people that are alive at this point in the family story can often not quite remember. So the tree is a symbol of that deep remembering of the parts of ancestry and the parts of our past and the parts of our lineage that may not be talked about, but we may feel and experience in the field. It may come up through the members of the family. They may live out the elements of the ancient family trauma system that the root system of the tree is symbolic of. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we come up to Christmas, the birth of Christ, and Christ was a figure who was essentially dismembered on the cross there, torn apart on the cross, and then remembered 3 days later. He was able to rise again and hence his birth being on the 25th of December, 3 days after the winter solstice, much like Dionysus was also dismembered and then remembered, and 3 days later he came back to life as well. So it's a return of the sun, it's a return of the light story and myth, and these stories are often told into this time of year, even though, of course, that is not the story of Christmas in the modern day. The story of Christmas in the modern day is the birth of Christ, and it's Easter, where the celebration of the return to life is, which is more like it's around the equinox, when we're moving from the winter time into spring. But nonetheless, the deeper symbolic time of year of the birth of Christ being on the 25th of December, the same day as Dionysus, is reflective of that death of the light, the longest night of the year, and then the sun slowly returning, and things starting to come back to life again. And we'll certainly be hearing that in the story today. So yes, you have been warned that we're in the darkest time of year, even though, as I'm in the Southern Hemisphere, currently in Australia, in my hometown of Perth, visiting family. And down here it's hot, and we're getting these long summer days, and everybody's down at the beach and in water, essentially trying to cool off. Certainly not wearing what Santa Claus might wear, but at the same time, Christmas is celebrated down here, so it's an interesting mismatch of symbols. But yes, we will be joining in the Northern Hemisphere feeling of the light returning, or the light darkening and then returning with our story. So you'll be able to hear in our story these fragments of, definitely you can hear Snow White right from the beginning, and you may hear elements of the Raven, or at least a journey that's certainly heading through the underworld. There's remnants of Medusa in this myth as well, and the loss of one's head. And yes, just to give you one final warning, there is some gruesome and dark stuff that's going to go on here. But the thing about this kind of darkness is that it's not gratuitous, and it's not over the top. It's symbolic, and it lets us know that it's quite natural and quite normal in a sense, quite common in a way, for symbolically there to be dismemberings that happen, and splits, and traumas that occur. And it's not to wish for a world where there wasn't such trauma, but instead have a psychologically rich culture that knows how to make it through such events, and remember the element of eternal life. And perhaps that's why we put lights on these Christmas trees, and ornaments, and little bits of gold, and gifts under the tree, to remind us that the light is returning. So, the ninth house, why am I doing it for the ninth house? Well, as I've talked about in the other episodes, the ninth is that house of broadcasting and letting our voice be heard and speaking the truth. And it's also the house that follows the eighth house. And right back from my interview with Travis, where we talked about that cusp of the eighth and ninth, and into my solo episode and my talk with Amanda as well, we've been feeling that essence of going back and forth between eighth and ninth, and making sure we're not leaving any of the gold behind in the underworld, any of those boons from that journey down, and making sure we're bringing up everything that we need for this upper world. And that's what the ninth is really about. It's the house where we bring our hard-earned gold, and we bring it to the world. We publish it, we let it be known, we let it be seen. And that's what we'll be finding out in this story. So it's a story that I don't know by heart. Like some of these stories I've been able to just tell you off the cuff, but this is one I'm going to actually read from the Grimm collection and take some pauses as we go. So imagine this is like a little bit of a solstice story time for you. And we will be pausing along the way and unfolding some of this story and what it means and what all these symbols are about. So the story begins. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife. and they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the women prayed for them day and night, but still they had none. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house in which was a juniper tree, and one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple. So here's the apple of Snow White. And while she was paring herself the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "Ah, if I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And while she thus spoke, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if that were going to happen. So isn't it interesting, just to take a little pause here, that in Snow White there's also a black frame, and in this story we have no black frame, we just have the red and the white that have blended together in the snow, but we do have the apple from Snow White already present. And so we understand from this opening that the story of Snow White was definitely in circulation, one the people of Germany at this time would have known quite well, and this seems to be a story that comes off of that. But interestingly, we have the black frame that is hidden and obscured. We do not have a black frame, so where will the blackening come from? And it certainly does come in this story, I assure you. Then she went into the house, and a month went by and the snow was gone. So you can imagine that we're about to go through 9 months. And just as I'm reading these, maybe you can associate with the houses if you've been coming on this journey, and take a moment to feel if this 9-month process fits the houses. My sense is that some of it does and some of it does not, but I'll leave that for you to feel into if you've been a long-term listener and you've been with me through all of the houses. Just get a sense of if each one has that. So we start with the first month, and the snow was gone. And 2 months, and then everything was green. And 3 months, and then all the flowers came out of the earth. And 4 months, and then all the trees in the wood grew thicker. This is definitely a fourth house moment here. All the trees in the wood grew thicker, and the green branches were all closely entwined. So we can get a sense of this 4th month when we have the ancestry is entwining itself around us. And the birds sang until the wood resounded, and the blossoms fell from the trees. So this is a powerful image for the 4th house here. And then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelt so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell on her knees and was beside herself with joy. So that certainly fits the 5th. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was large and fine, which is quite 6th, actually, the harvest of the 6th. And the 7th month, she snatched at the juniper berries and ate them greedily. I'm not sure if that's particularly 7th house, but I'll let you feel into that. And then she grew sick and sorrowful. And then the 8th month passed, and this is very 8th house, and she called to her husband and wept and said, "If I die, then bury me under the juniper tree." And then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over. And then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood. And when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. So this is a very different approach than our queen from Snow White. We're going much more into the details of how this child came to be. And I think there's, if you go back, I'll leave a link in the show notes to spend your own time with this story. You may spend a bit of time just hanging out within this 9-month process and allowing yourself to really slow down into each of those phases of the 9 that takes us through the 9 months and into the 9th house where we are now. And we've had the birth of this child, but also the death. So we feel that essence of 8th to 9th, where there's a death, something has died, but also something has been born as well. So I will invite you into your symbolic minds now, and we'll leave your logical, linear minds at the door for what is to come next. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to weep sore. After some time, he was more at ease, and though he still wept, he could bear it. And after some time longer, he took another wife. So we're following along pretty closely with Snow White here, where we have a new wife. Now, is she going to be like the new wife from Cinderella, the evil stepmother, or the new wife in Snow White, who is the wicked and vain queen? Not exactly, but she's going to be maybe a darker version than all of them put together. By the second wife, he had a daughter, but the first wife's child was a little son. So there's a twist for you. Snow White in this story, or Snow White Blood Red in this story, is in fact her son. So the oldest child is the son, who is Snow White. And he was red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much. But then she looked at the little boy, and it seemed to cut her to the heart, for the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter. And the evil one filled her mind with this till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and she pushed him from one corner to the other and slapped him here and cuffed him there until the poor child was in continual terror, for when he came out of school he had no peace in any place. So our Snow White Blood Red boy is having a rough time in his childhood. He's been bullied by his stepmother, who wants everything, all the 8th house inheritance. She wants all of that to go to her daughter, and she ultimately wants rid of this little boy, and she's starting to build up a deep hatred and vengeance for him. One day the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too and said, "Mother, give me an apple." So there's this apple again. "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid with a great sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes out of school." And when she saw from the window that he was coming, it was just as if the devil entered into her, and she snatched at the apple and took it away again from her daughter and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." And then she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. So I'm going to give you one last content warning. We're heading into a ghost story, horror story from here that'll take us into that solstice energy. Then the little boy came in at the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, "My son, will you have an apple?" And she looked wickedly at him. "Mother," said the little boy, "how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple." So here's our Snow White Blood Red, a little bit like Snow White in our story of Snow White, where there's a naivety here. The brother is able to see that there's something off here with how dreadful you look. That's the red side, able to see that there's danger in the red, but then goes back to his white side, his innocent side, and says, "Yes, give me an apple." Much like Snow White in our story is unable to resist the lure of that particular apple that is in fact poisonous, that she's been warned about again and again, but she can't help herself. And so then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, so you can hear something really is taking over her here, something very dark, "Come with me." And she opened the lid of the chest and said, "Take out an apple for yourself." And while the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash, she shut the lid down, and his head flew off and fell among the red apples. I did warn you. Then she was overwhelmed with terror and thought, "If I could but make them think that it was not done by me." So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, and folded the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen. And she set him on a chair in front of the door and put the apple in his hand. So this white handkerchief, she is now taking out the white and faking innocence here, where she is very much guilty of the crime, as we can see. And after this, Marlinchen, so this is the first time we actually get the name of the daughter, and we never really get the name of the brother, but her name is Marlinchen. And I looked up the meaning of Marlinchen. It doesn't really mean much from everything I can see, but kind of like cute little one, something like that, like the little cute one. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she was constantly stirring round. This is an interesting image. I feel like I haven't really seen this image until this moment, where she's standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she's constantly stirring around, constantly stirring the hot water like her blood is boiling, and she is in the midst of something very intense and dark that she's up to here. And hot, like that hot stirring up of the water. "Mother," said Marlinchen, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened." "Go back to him," said her mother, "and if he will not answer you, give him a box on the ear." So not only is she going to decapitate this boy, but she's going to frame little Marlinchen for that. And so Marlinchen went to him and said, "Brother, give me the apple," but he was silent. And she gave him a box on the ear, whereupon his head fell off. Marlinchen was terrified and began crying and screaming and ran to her mother and said, "Alas, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off." And she wept and could not be comforted. "Marlinchen," said the mother, "what have you done? But be quiet and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings." And then the mother took the little boy and chopped him into pieces, put him into the pan, and made him into black puddings. But Marlinchen stood by weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. So yes, it's getting darker and weirder and more gruesome and more grim as we head into the darkness of winter. And I just promise you that we will make our way out of this dark 8th house. We will make our way out together. Don't worry, stay with us. Then the father came home and sat down to dinner and said, "But where is my son?" And the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlinchen wept and could not leave off. Then the father again said, "But where is my son?" "Ah," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great uncle. He will stay there a while." "And what is he going to do there? He did not even say goodbye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He's well taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel so unhappy lest all should not be right. He ought to have said goodbye to me." With that he began to eat and said, "Marlinchen, why are you crying? Your brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Ah, wife, how delicious this food is. Give me some more." And the more he ate, the more he wanted to have, and he said, "Give me some more, you shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate and threw all the bones under the table until he had finished the whole. So this hunger that the father has, not knowing what he's doing, not knowing what he's eating, but it's a bit like the raven here, this part of the story where the blackness comes in, the darkness comes in, where he's eating this his son without realizing it. It's an unusually common story in myth and fairy tale where there's the eating or the digesting of the son, and we are reminded here of Christmas. And in fact, it's something that even comes through into Christianity, the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. And I do remember those times in church of eating the body of Christ and drinking the blood of Christ as part of the ritual. So as much as it sounds like some weird, gruesome Germanic tale from some archaic place, it is in fact something that's come all the way down into the modern day through Christianity. There is an eating of the Son of God and a drinking of the blood. So in some ways we are with the Father here, and we're eating and drinking of the body of Christ, who will come back again into our Christmas story. But Marlinchen went away to her chest of drawers, and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer, and got all the bones from beneath the table and tied them up in her silk handkerchief, and carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Weeping tears of blood. So the grief is going deep for Marlinchen here. She's really holding the soul here. She's collecting the bones, she's wrapping in a silk handkerchief, and she's heading back to the Juniper Tree. So she's doing this deep work of remembering, of seeing, of witnessing. And although she's not such an active character here, she's playing such a critical role, such an 8th house role here. She's holding the memory, she's weeping the tears, she's even weeping the blood, and she's connecting and gathering up. It's a bit like in Egyptian mythology when Osiris is dismembered and scattered all over the world. It's Isis that goes around and weeps and collects and gathers up his parts so that he can be born again. And Isis also buries these bones in these different parts in order that it should connect back to the earth and then ultimately bring Osiris back together again. And then she lay down under the juniper tree on the green grass, and after she had lain down there, she suddenly felt light-hearted and did not cry any more. Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder and moved together again, just as if someone were rejoicing and clapping his hands. At the same time, a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire. This is some beautiful 9th house imagery. And a beautiful bird flew out of the fire, singing magnificently, and he flew high up in the air, and when he was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Marlinchen, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother was still alive, and she went merrily into the house and sat down to dinner and ate. So this feels like one of the ultimate symbols of transformation, going from the very deep, dark, traumatic field of the 8th. The bones are being gathered, our dismembered parts are being gathered together by the soul, the anima, and a lot of weeping and grieving has been done. But in the burying and the ritual and the gathering and the remembering, there's a potent field here, an alchemical field in which the bird, which we can see in many different stories, this winged one like Pegasus, is born out of the deepest, darkest material and flies up into the sky. And so Marlinchen now is happy, and she went merrily into the house and sat down to dinner and ate. So she's now moved through this deep, dark process and is able to return to joy, which I really do feel is a 9th house element. If we make it all the way through our underworld initiation, our underworld process, then there is a great joy that happens here in the night, the great banquet of being able to return to our joy and return to our feeling place and return to the sense of meaning and that everything is okay in the world again. But the bird flew away and lighted on a goldsmith's house. So here is a goldsmith, one who works with the gold, a sort of alchemical figure here. And he began to sing. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a golden chain when he heard the bird, which was sitting singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers. It's a very interesting image of crossing a threshold and losing one of our slippers. It happens to many. In fact, Jason and the Argonauts, when he's helping Hera to make it over the water, he loses a shoe there too, and that's how they know him as Jason, the golden one, the one who is able to retrieve the golden fleece. So we get a bit of a link here back to Jason and I'm sure many others that operate with one shoe on and one shoe off to show us something, to show off sort of something that is as special is occurring here. But he went away right up the middle of the street with one shoe on and one sock. He had his apron on, and in one hand he had the golden chain, and in the other the pincers. And the sun was shining brightly on the street, very ninth house images. Then he went right on and stood still and said to the bird, "Bird," said he then, "how beautifully you can sing. Sing me that piece again." "No," said the bird, and this is a really beautiful ninth house recognition. "No," said the bird, "I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the golden chain, and then I will sing it again for you." So the bird is willing to sing it once, but then afterwards has to recognize the value of his song, the hard-earned song, and that there should be a fair exchange for the beauty of what he has there. He's obviously singing so profoundly, so beautifully, and it's important in the ninth house that we acknowledge the value in what we've earned, the value of the boon that we earned from the eighth house. If we're just willing to give it away, then it's something that cannot be it's something that needs to be truly deeply valued, symbolically valued. This doesn't mean necessarily that we have to go and up our prices and make sure that we're getting paid big amounts of American dream money or anything like that. But I do think it means that we need to value ourselves in the ninth, because this is, after all, how we get that gold out. When we get that inner gold, we want to get it out. And when we get the gold out, it must be highly valued. I think things in the ninth are highly valued materials. And I think it's a beautiful component of this story that the bird is willing to sing it once, but will not sing it twice for nothing. "There," said the goldsmith, "there is the golden chain for you. Now sing me that song again." Then the bird came and took the golden chain in his right claw and went and sat in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kawit, kawit, what a beautiful bird am I." And then the bird flew away to a shoemaker and lighted on his roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kawit, kawit, what a beautiful bird am I." The shoemaker heard that and ran out of doors in his shirt sleeves and looked up at his roof, and was forced to hold his hand before his eyes lest the sun should blind him. We're constantly hearing about the sun here. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully you can sing." Then he called in at his door, "Wife, just come outside. There is a bird. Look at that bird. He certainly can sing." Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up the street and looked at the bird and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. What a profound description of this bird. I'm going to read it again. So everybody's come up the street to look at the bird and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go to the garret. Upon the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down." I think if you've been listening, you'll know those red shoes from Snow White, and these are the red hot shoes that the Queen has to wear and dance in at the end, but these are some different red shoes, that's for sure. "Bring them down." Then the wife went and brought the shoes. "There, bird," said the man, "now sing me that piece again." Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw and flew back on the roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kawit, kawit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had finished his song, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and he flew far away to a mill. And the mill went clip, clap, clip, clap, clip, clap, and in the mill sat 20 millers' men, hewing a stone and cutting hick, hack, hick, hack, hick, hack, and the mill went click, clap, click, clap, clip, clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then one of them stopped working. "My father, he ate me." Then 2 more stopped working and listened to that. "My sister, little Marlinchen." Then 4 more stopped. "Gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief." Now 8 only were hewing. "Laid them beneath," now only 5, "the juniper tree," and now only 1. "Kewit, kewit, what a beautiful bird am I." Then the last stopped also, and heard the last words. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully you sing. Let me too hear that. Sing that once more for me." "Nay," said the bird, "I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and then I will sing it again." "Yes," said he, "if it belonged to me only, you should have it." "Yes," said the others, "if he sings again, he shall have it." And then the bird came down, and the 20 millers all set to work with a beam and raised the stone up, and the bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone on as if it were a collar, and flew on the tree again and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kewit, kewit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew far away to his father's house. So this beautiful bird has gone off into the world and sung his song, and this is such a profound ninth house story, the ability to sing our song, to tell our story proudly, even if it is a gruesome story, even if it has a lot of shame and a lot of pain and a lot of trauma in it. It's this ability to sing and to sing freely and to be free. And I think that's really what the ninth house is all about. It's in the ninth that we want to be free. We want to speak freely. We don't want to allow the shame monster to shut us down, and so that our voice is not heard, or that our voice is stuck in the 8th or trapped somewhere. The bird in itself is that ability, that voice, that, trauma in life is inevitable. Pain in life is inevitable. This is what life is about. But the option here is whether we head into the 9th or not, whether we have the courage like this bird and the grace to sing our song and to sing it loud and proud. His song is very simple. He just says exactly what's happened. But fortunately for this bird, everybody wants to hear it. And he's singing it in such a profound way. He's turned his story of great pain and shame. He's turned it into art. And people want to participate in the art that he has through song, like the muses that are singing through him. His song is so beautiful. Maybe if he just said these things without the song, people wouldn't want to hear it at all. But because he's able to turn it into song and story, people do want to hear it. And that's really the power of myth, the power of song, the power of art, to allow for things that are somewhat terrifying in everyday life to be galvanized into something that people can actually absorb and want to absorb and desire absorbing and reflecting on and participating in the great art of our lives, the great art of this trauma turned into beauty. In the room sat the father, the mother, and Marlinchen at dinner. So the bird has flown back to his home and everybody is sitting at dinner. And the father said, "How light-hearted I feel, how happy I am." "Nay," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming." Marlinchen, however, sat weeping and weeping. And then came the bird flying, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, "Ah, I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel just as if I were about to see some old friend again." "Nay," said the woman, "I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have fire in my veins." And she tore her stays open, but Marlinchen sat in a corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then the mother stopped her ears and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear. But there was a roaring in her ears like the most violent storm, and her eyes burnt and flashed like lightning. My father, he ate me. Ah, mother, said the man, that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there is a smell just like cinnamon. My sister, little Marlinchen. Then Marlinchen laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing. But the man said, I'm going out. I must see the bird quite close. Oh, don't go, said the woman. I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire. But the man went out and looked at the bird, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And on this the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly around the man's neck, and so exactly round it that it fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, just look what a fine bird that is, and what a handsome golden chain he's given me, and how pretty he is. So the man now has the golden chain, and if we think about that transformation of a decapitation into a golden chain, the gold really literally is coming from the place where the violence happened here. But the woman was terrified and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more, my mother, she killed me. Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth so as not to hear that. You can hear how much she wants to sink back into the underworld, this woman, how terrified she is, and how all of her crimes against the family and all of this fury that has come through her and all the darkness that she's enacted is coming back through the inside on her now. It's being enacted from her inner world. My father, he ate me. Then the woman fell down again as if dead. My sister, little Marlinchen. Ah, said Marlinchen, I too will go out and see if the bird will give me anything. And she went out, gathered together all of my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Then he threw down the shoes to her, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes and danced and leapt into the house. Ah, said she, I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes. Well, said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames of fire. I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if my heart feels lighter. And as she went out the door, crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. Well, she got that grim ending, which often happens in these stories. And isn't it interesting that a stone, it was that fell on her head here, a stone like this Saturnian component, a stone that is used to mill, has come all the way back around and landed upon her and crushed her. The millstone. The father and Marlinchen heard what had happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother. And he took his father and Marlinchen by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner and ate. And that is where the story ends. These Grimm brothers stories are always so efficient with their words. They take you on such mythic journeys, but they don't take a lot of time. And that's really the beauty of fairy tales from all over the world, and how they tell their stories and tell their myths so efficiently and wrap things up. Unlike myth, and this is the difference between the mythic world and the fairy tale world, because in the fairy tale world, of course, things wrap up in the end. But in the mythic world, things are constantly opening into something else. The mythic world never resolves anything. If it remains myth, then it remains open, and things continue to be passed down again and again and again from generation to generation, and there's never any real sense of completion. But fairy tales, however, have that satisfying element of bringing us to a close, as this one has. So this is the story of the Juniper Tree. I get the sense that with this story, it sort of speaks for itself, all of these images. But I will say that I find the bird, all sorts of birds really, such a fantastic image of ninth house wisdom. I'm reminded of Cinderella, also helped by birds along the way. The birds come along and, help her with her tasks and give her those beautiful dresses in which she can go to the ball. They alert people to things, like they tell the truth, these birds. Like when the prince is riding away with the stepsisters, it's the birds that come along and point out the blood that's in the shoes, and then at the end peck out the eyes of those stepsisters. So the birds are creatures of the air, of the light, who are able to be light enough to get into the air realms, to get into that ninth house realm, and also to sing their song. And that is the bird wisdom, the ability to sing their song, and that return of the voice that maybe, if we think about the third house as well as a place where we can lose our voice, where we can find our voice and lose our voice, that element of third house communication and the lost voice of the third from this fairy tale logic can come back when we move through all of the phases, when we move through our underworld cycle and bring back the boon. And the return of the voice, it's such a powerful motif. There's a mobilization after the freeze. And I'm sure all of us who are listening can relate to freeze in our lives, to relate to times in our lives where or even repeating patterns in our lives where we lose ourselves and we lose our life force. And stories like this help us to remember that life force that can come back, our voice can come back, our ability to fly, our ability to be in the sky realm, and our ability to sing our song can and does return. And being able to sing and speak the truth, and with that truth stand solidly in it. That's the thing about this bird. He only sings the one song. He just tells exactly what has happened, but he also makes it into song. He makes it into something beautiful. And there's something in song as well, like the muses, that can take us back to that deep memory. The muses or song lines can hold memory for us in a way that our regular mind cannot. So this element of singing our song is also an element of remembering. Just as dismembered by losing his head, he gets remembered in the end, being stitched back together in a way, but going through the fire realm and the air realm, and then eventually returning with the boons that everybody gave him along the way for his song. So yeah, we get the sense of the golden chain that the father gets. It's like restoration of the lineage and the value, and the reparation without shame. And I think that's what that golden chain really represents around his neck, a remembering that there has been dismembering, remembering that there has been dismembering, and that there's gold that comes from that, the links in the chain, and that remembering that everybody is a link in the chain. And that's what makes lineage, that's what makes history in a way. And a sense that in the end it does come together and does come back full circle. This is like a natural process of restoration rather than a punishment reward system. It's a coming back together that chain represents, and the gold. And then the red shoes that is given to the sister, it's like the sister has spent so much time in that deep grieving and loss, and the red shoes allow her to move again and to be embodied again, and the return of life. It's like permission for her to live on and to be herself, and to dance and to leap through the air. And yeah, that's what the sister is, a fascinating member of this story, who really goes in between those deep senses of loss. She's witnessing everything. She's connecting to everything that happens, but then she's also connecting back to the joy of Eros, the joy of life force that comes back for her. And then the stepmother, well, yeah, it's the millstone. It's like recognizing that some things are just not going to be metabolized. Some things are just not going to be okay. And it's very Saturnian, the stone, and Saturn, the stone falls upon the stepmother. It's like in our interior world, if we have that really harsh inner critic, or that one that is causing us so much trouble, it may be a sense of having to really take some action against that one, dropping the stone upon that one. In a way, that's what Saturn represents in the chart. It's where our most critical voice is. When the stone returns, it connects to the Saturnian force, and we clear out that area that was just like a stuck life force. Something happened within that character where she was not able to be with life. Even the deep grieving and the loss, she was really in that anti-life energy, and that energy needed to be very systematically removed. And isn't it interesting in that it's a collective that give the millstone? There's individuals that give the golden chain and the red shoes, but the millstone is given by all of the millers, and all of them have to agree that this will have to happen. Essentially, they will give their millstone over to the bird, and that's a collective decision. So in a way, that's also very ninth house. It's like the collective decision of justice and what we will accept and what we will not accept. And the hammer of the judge comes down in the form of this millstone that does end the cycle, and life force can return at that point. So yeah, it's worth, I think it's an interesting idea within the story, and maybe for us to ponder here that some structures cannot be integrated, and there is a need to end things, to be very clear, structured and boundaried, and end things that really aren't working for us, whether that's an addictive pattern or a looping cycle or whatever it is that's just never going to be integrated into the system. We may have to take swift and decisive action, which the millstone represents. So that's our story of the juniper tree. And of course, it's the juniper tree itself. It's that maybe the juniper tree is like the wild side of the Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree is the one that's domesticated and brought inside, but the juniper tree is still living out there in the world. And of course, a fun element of juniper, I mean, the first thing that came to me around juniper, it is also the juniper berries at which we make gin. And gin being that drink that can both bring the merriment but also the deep depression. And the fact that we even call it gin, like that it's a ginny, that it's something of the other world. So, we get little extra bonus links in the chain there, leading us back to gin and the juniper. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that story. I feel like it's a story that really can take us into the Christmas period and that darkening, but also the lightening. Or if you're if you're in the southern hemisphere, maybe that lightening that starts the darkening. But either way, we're at that turning point, the solstice being where the sun stands still, and we're at that turning point in the year, either heading towards more light from here or heading towards more darkness from here if you're in the southern hemisphere. So wishing you a joyful and beautiful and soulful solstice and new moon that leads into the festive season. Christmas, if you celebrate it. New Year's, the end of the modern calendar, and heading into 2026. And may it be a beautiful 2026 for all of you. This is a great time of year to do some reflecting on the year that was, what's happened for you in this year where there was so much shifting and changing in the astrological landscape. And I wonder how that was for you in your interior worlds, and what has happened in your life, what your life was like at the turn of last year and what it looks like at the turn of this year. And if there's changes and endings and closures for you, as there are for certainly myself and for many of us out there that I've been talking to recently. It's a year of deep transformation. And perhaps as a numerological 1 year, 2026 will be the kind of year that we get to start again, just like our bird who's able to make his way from the fire and sing his song with beauty and grace and ease. And I wish that for you as you close out this year. And I will see you as we enter 2026 and we enter the midheaven in the 10th house, and we make our final run home for the 10th, 11th and 12th. We have some beautiful things coming up for you. Thanks for all of my listeners, especially thanks to all of my patrons for joining me there. You can actually join on the free tier of the patrons if you want to just see what I'm posting there and get involved in the conversation. And very, very grateful to the patrons who have supported the show financially. This is my version of, I guess, the bird. that is very joyful to receive those payments, and so it's a deep honoring. So thank you to all of those patrons that are on paid tiers. I just want to say to you, I really appreciate that. If you'd like to join those guys that are paying just for a membership, like a tip jar donation, then that is very much welcomed. Thanks a lot for joining me, and see you again soon. Thank you for listening to On the Soul's Terms podcast. To support the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review, sharing with friends, or becoming a patron at patreon.com/onthesoulsterms. Until next time.